After my adoptive parents found their biological daughter, they kicked me out. Before I could even process my sadness, an elegant woman rushed towards me, enveloped me in a hug, and choked back tears. "My darling, I've finally found you." It turned out, I was the long-lost heiress to a vast fortune. I was coming home from my part-time job, a small gift in hand, when my adoptive mom threw a suitcase at me. "Ashley's back. You're not needed anymore. Get out." When I was 6, they'd taken me in from the orphanage. I thought it was the beginning of a beautiful life. Turns out, it was the first step into a decade of drudgery. On my very first day, my so-called brother, Josh, soaked me with a super soaker. I ended up with a fever so high I nearly fried my brain. My adoptive dad, sitting on the couch, barely glanced up from his newspaper. "Know your place," he'd said. "Don't covet what's not yours." My adoptive mom was nice for a while, but I guess she realized I wasn't her real kid and stopped trying. I stood there for a second, then nodded obediently. "Okay, I understand." I picked up my suitcase, a flicker of sadness quickly replaced by pure joy. I almost couldn't stop myself from grinning. Honestly, life at their house was worse than being a maid. I had to wake up before dawn to make breakfast, smoothies for mom, pancakes for Josh, eggs and bacon for dad. I was basically their unpaid live-in chef. At least a real maid gets a salary. Still, they'd raised me, so I tried to be polite. "Thanks for everything," I said. "I'll take care of you when you're old." They probably thought I was after their money. Dad scoffed, tossed a paper at me, a legal disclaimer severing all ties. No more family, no more obligations. Maybe, just maybe, they had a tiny sliver of affection for me after all. I quickly signed and added a dramatic tear or two. "Bye, Mom, Dad, Josh," I sniffed. "Here are some gifts. A parting present." I held out the bags, turning away to hide my smile. All the other gifts had been fakes, but these were the real deal. Josh gasped. "Louis Vuitton. Chloe, where'd you get the money for this?" I finally looked at Ashley, their real daughter. Blonde, delicate, she was the picture of innocence, and reeked of fake sweetness. "I earned it," I mumbled, pretending to be hurt. "But they're so expensive, are they?" She trailed off, but we all knew the unspoken word, fake. I froze. Had they figured out about the knockoffs I'd given them before? Impossible. My supplier was the best. My silence confirmed Ashley's suspicions. "Chloe, how dare you be so vain?" Mom shrieked. "Get out of here with your junk." I sighed internally, grabbed my Crayola-covered suitcase, a relic from happier times, and left. This time, the gifts were real. Too bad. An hour later, I was standing on the sidewalk, lost. The big city suddenly felt very big, and I had nowhere to go. I tucked the Louis Vuitton box under my arm. Just as I took a step, a fancy car I'd never seen before pulled up. I backed away quickly. Couldn't afford to scratch that thing. The back door opened, and a stunning woman stepped out. We stared at each other for a moment. As I was about to turn away, she suddenly rushed forward and hugged me tightly. "Honey, I've finally found you." I was dumbfounded. She sobbed for a good while before letting go. I was still in a daze. She grabbed my hand, pulling me towards the car. I snapped back to reality. "Wait, I think you have the wrong person." She stroked my hair, her eyes full of tenderness. "There's no mistake. You're my daughter. You have a heart-shaped birthmark on your, well, you know." My jaw dropped. How did she know that? Seeming to read my mind, she explained, "Your age, the birthmark, everything matches." Her eyes welled up again. "I can't stand to see a beautiful woman cry." "Don't cry," I blurted out, squeezing her hand. I won't. Let's go home. I'll explain everything. You go by Chloe now, right?" I nodded, and let her lead me to the car, still slightly bewildered. The AC blasted, and my head cleared. Panic set in. Why did I get in the car? What if she's a kidnapper? My mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Thankfully, she just cried silently the entire ride. When we arrived, I was greeted with another hug, this time from a warm, cologne-scented man. "Sis, you're finally home." I mumbled something, thinking, this family really likes to hug. Finally free, I gaped at the enormous mansion in front of me. Move over, Downton Abbey. Once inside, things started to feel real. Hesitantly, I said, ma'am? "Chloe, I'm your mother." Looking at her flawless face, which looked barely 30, I couldn't bring myself to say Mom. She handed me a folder. I opened it to find a DNA test confirming I was indeed her daughter. Science doesn't lie. She explained that I'd been kidnapped at the age of 1. They'd spent years searching, and finally, after 16 long years, they'd found me. She started crying again. My eyes stung. I'd always thought I was an orphan. It turned out I had a family who loved me. "Mom, this is wonderful news." That was my other brother, Ethan, the hugger. Apparently, I also had an older brother, Alex, a brilliant doctor obsessed with medicine. Brilliant, we'd see. "Mom," I ventured, "where's Dad?" She wiped her tears. "He's on a business trip overseas, but he'll be back soon." Just then, a roar filled the air. "Look! Your father's home." I looked out the window to see a private jet landing on their lawn. Is this real life? I wondered. I recognized my dad instantly. He was, like, super famous. A billionaire. Who wouldn't recognize him? To avoid another surprise hug, I rushed towards him. "Dad." He choked out a single, teary hey. Blood is a strange thing. I'd lived with the Millers for 10 years and felt nothing. But with my real family, there was an instant connection. That evening, Alex rushed in, straight from the hospital. I tried to preemptively hug him, but doctors have fast reflexes. He caught me first. This time, I was ready. I patted his back. "Alex, long time no see." He froze, then his eyes reddened. "Chloe, it's all my fault. If I'd been watching you." I wanted to tell him it hadn't been that bad. The orphanage was nice, and even with the chores at the Millers, I had food, shelter, and an education. But he seemed convinced I'd suffered terribly. Before I could speak, he felt my pulse. "Strong and steady," he declared. He frowned. "Physically healthy. But has she suffered psychological trauma?" I stared at him. "Dude, do I look traumatized?" The next day, my parents suggested a party to announce my return. I politely declined. Not because I wanted to be low-key, but because I didn't know anyone they'd invite. What's the point? So, news of my return was kept within a small circle. The Millers, however, threw a huge bash to introduce Ashley, even sending an invitation to my parents. It ended up in the trash, where I spotted it while getting a glass of water. Later, some friends from school texted, pretending to care, but really just wanting to gawk. Little did they know, while they were texting, Mom was having Chanel's head designer flown in to make me custom clothes. They just couldn't comprehend the perks of being rich. A month later, school started. Since I was already a senior at a prestigious private school, I didn't bother transferring. I walked into class and saw Ashley and Josh. "Chloe," Ashley chirped, her face a mix of surprise and pity. "Are you here to get your things?" "Her things? What things?" a classmate asked, looking up from her books. "Oh, didn't you hear? Chloe doesn't live with us anymore. I guess she can't afford this school now," she whispered, glancing at me. Clueless much? I wasn't planning on engaging. But Josh wasn't done. He marched over, glaring. "Chloe Miller, did you steal our money? First, I'm not Chloe Miller anymore. Second, you packed my bags. You know if I took anything." He had no comeback, so he just started ranting. I sighed. How had I put up with this idiot for so long? I slowly pulled out a roll of duct tape, ripped off a piece, and slapped it over his mouth. Blissful silence. For the rest of the day, I could feel their stares burning into my back. The next day was the placement test. Before dismissal, Ashley approached me with fake concern. "Chloe, the test is tomorrow. Josh said you always ranked first. That's so impressive." The class erupted in laughter. "First from the bottom," someone yelled. "Oh," Ashley gasped, covering her mouth. "I'm so sorry, Chloe. I didn't realize." "It's okay," I said. "You're kinda right." She almost started crying again. I hadn't even touched her. Another classmate jumped in. "Chloe, why are you bullying Ashley? She gets good grades. Just because you don't." "Me jealous of her?" I finally spoke up. "I'd show them." "Then prove it. Get a better score than Ashley tomorrow," the girl challenged. I considered it, then nodded. "Fine." "Chloe, she didn't mean it. Don't be rash," Ashley pleaded, the corners of her mouth twitching upwards. "I'm not being rash," I said calmly. I grabbed my bag, then paused. "You were born in March. I was born in November. I'm younger than you. Don't call me Chloe." The next morning, Josh swaggered over and banged on my desk. I was organizing my pencils and ignored him. He banged harder. I finally looked up. "Heard you're gonna beat Ashley on the test," he sneered. "Heard from who?" He sputtered, then recovered. "Doesn't matter. Let's make a bet. If you lose, you leave school." "No bet," I said. "Chicken." Silence. "Scared?" More silence. His tactics were pathetic. "You're such a loser," he finally exploded. The crowd grew. I shrugged. "Fine. I'll bet. If I win, Ashley leaves." He laughed. "You? Beat Ashley? She's like a straight A student. So, is it a bet?" "Deal," he smirked. As I walked the halls, I was met with a mixture of pity and amusement. The closer the test results got, the more intense the looks became. Some people probably thought I had a secret admirer. The day the scores were posted, I sat at my desk, yawning. I'd been up late playing video games with Ethan. My calmness was interpreted as fear by Josh and Ashley. Ashley approached me, feigning concern. "It's just a bet, Chloe. I won't hold it against you." "We have to be honest," I yawned. "That's what teachers always say." Josh joined her. "Get ready to pack your bags, Chloe. Unless you want to apologize publicly, then maybe you can stay." Such an idiot. The Millers were doomed. "Chloe, even if you didn't do well, it's okay. As long as you improved. If you have any questions, you can always ask me," Ashley simpered. Just then, someone burst in. "Josh! Chloe got first place. For real?" "Impossible," Ashley shrieked, then lowered her voice. "Are you sure?" I stood up and patted Ashley's shoulder, mirroring her earlier tone. "Don't worry, Ashley. Even if you didn't do well, as long as you improved, you can always ask me for help." She glared at me and ran out of the classroom, clutching her face. I hadn't even said anything mean. A few days later, during math class, the principal stormed in. "Chloe, outside." He proceeded to yell at me. "You're a senior. If you're not going to study, at least don't cheat. You think you can pull this off in college?" He was so angry, the few hairs on his head were vibrating. Clearly, my carefully crafted dumb blonde persona was too convincing. Nobody believed I could actually be smart. But I was. Josh had threatened me for years. I deliberately dumbed myself down to avoid his wrath. It hadn't been easy. "Sir, I didn't cheat. I got first place. Who could I possibly copy from?" I asked earnestly. He sputtered, then said, "Someone reported you for having a phone during the test." "Who would do that?" "Your score is voided. You'll be publicly reprimanded at Monday's assembly. Next time, you're expelled." He stomped off. The bell rang, and my classmates swarmed me. "Chloe, you cheater. I knew you couldn't get first place. So, are you going to leave now? You have a 0, after all. Their glee annoyed me. That evening, I dramatically threw myself into my mom's arms. Mom, they're bullying me. After I explained, she smiled wickedly. Don't worry, sweetie. Mom will take care of this. Monday morning, I stood beside the stage, waiting for my public shaming. I smiled at the crowd below, causing a ripple of murmurs. She's actually smiling. The nerve. Probably just giving up. The principal glared at me. What are you smiling about? Is smiling not allowed? I asked innocently. He huffed and turned to the microphone. I'm here today to severely reprimand. Suddenly, the elderly headmaster sprinted onto the stage and grabbed the microphone. The principal looked bewildered as the headmaster shoved him off the stage. That old man was surprisingly strong. I knew, because he lived next door and sometimes came over to admire our mansion. Once, I'd given him a tour, and he'd shown me he could crush walnuts with his bare hands. The principal stumbled, his face reddening. The headmaster beamed at the crowd. Good morning, students. I'm your headmaster. Applause erupted. He clearly loved being the center of attention. Today, I'm here to commend a student from class 10-A. Chloe has achieved first place in the National Math Olympiad, the National Essay Competition, the National English Speaking Competition, the National Physics Competition. He went on for 5 minutes, listing every competition I'd ever entered, even a public speaking contest from elementary school. I'd entered them all independently, so the school hadn't known. Guess those paid off. Let's give her a round of applause. The students stared, then burst into thunderous applause. I had to admit, I was pretty awesome. I saw Ashley's pale face in the crowd. Satisfying. After the assembly, Ashley approached me. Chloe, you're so secretive. Why didn't you tell us about all these awards? You're right, I said. Huh? I don't consider you us. My parents are billionaires. Who are you? I wondered if she was planning on hitting me up for money. Ashley's face darkened. Life at school improved. Some people still looked at me with disdain, but I was above petty drama. Around this time, Ethan's new game launched its beta test. I'd initially thought Ethan was an unemployed gamer, since he was always dragging me into online matches. Turns out, he was a coding genius. He'd designed the wildly popular Godslayer game, which had made him a ton of money and internet famous. His new game, Phoenix Legacy, was already generating hype. One morning, my deskmate, Jake, the captain of the soccer team, gushed, Chloe, have you heard about Phoenix Legacy? The beta is out. I nodded. I'd spent hours playing it the previous night, until Mom had to drag Ethan away by his ear. Fire is a legend. I wish I could meet him. Fire was Ethan's online handle. I was about to tell him who Fire really was, when Ashley materialized beside Jake. Jake, are you talking about Fire? Yeah. Do you know him? Ashley giggled. We've met. My parents do business with him. I stared at her. Ethan never mentioned knowing her. Jake jumped up. No way. Can you get me his autograph? Or even better, a beta key? There are only 10,000 worldwide, and you need connections. Ashley smiled. I can try, but no promises. I kept quiet, curious to see if she was really connected to my brother. I vastly underestimated Ethan's fame. Within hours, the whole school knew Ashley knew Fire and could get beta keys. She basked in the attention, flipping her hair. It's nothing, really. We've just met. I'll see what I can do. Does he like me? No, of course not. But he's always been very sweet to me. By the end of the day, rumors swirled that Fire was madly in love with Ashley. After school, I found Ethan waiting for me on his motorcycle, his silver hair gleaming, a black mask covering his face. I pointed at his hair. You, I couldn't form a sentence. He flipped his hair dramatically. Just did an interview. Like the look? I thought you didn't do interviews. He sighed. A man's gotta eat. I rolled my eyes. Show off? He took my backpack, handed me a pink helmet, and patted the back of his bike. Hop on. As I was about to get on, Ashley called out, Chloe. Seriously? I thought. Oblivious, she continued, my dad's picking me up. Want a ride? She gave Ethan a pointed look. Chloe, you shouldn't hang out with these rough types. If you need anything, let my parents know. They'll help you. Ethan started to speak, but I squeezed his hand. I pointed at him. Ashley, don't you recognize him? She frowned. Of course not. Grinning, I pulled down Ethan's mask. Really? A flicker of surprise, then anger. What's that supposed to mean? I should know this. Hoodlum? Not at all. I hopped on the bike and waved. See ya. For the next few days, Ashley continued spinning her lies, while Josh remained smug. He was probably loving the attention. But Ashley couldn't deliver the goods, and people started getting suspicious. She changed her story, claiming Fire believed in fairness and wouldn't give out special treatment. Plus, he was very private, so no autographs. Jake was devastated. He moped around, barely eating. I couldn't stand it. I told Ethan, and he gave me 10 beta keys, each allowing 10 simultaneous logins. The next morning, I handed them to Jake. Chloe, you're a goddess. He started jumping up and down. He had a lot of gods, apparently. Once he calmed down, he asked where I got them. My brother, I said. His eyes widened. He leaned in conspiratorially. Don't worry, Chloe, I won't rat him out. I nodded, unsure what he meant, but figured it couldn't be a big deal. A week later, the police showed up. They arrested me for theft? Apparently, a manager at Ethan's company heard about the beta keys and thought I'd stolen them to sell. I was led out in front of the whole class. Ashley was grinning. Fine. You wanna play? I called Ethan from the station, and the police realized their mistake. They drove me back to school, apologizing profusely. Jake rushed over, sobbing. Chloe, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to get you in trouble. I blabbed. He explained that he'd assumed I'd gotten the keys illegally, and he'd accidentally mentioned his theory to someone. It had spread like wildfire. I patted his back. First-time offender. I'll let it slide. He looked up, sniffling. Thanks, boss. Senior year was demanding, and school ended later. My parents worried about me walking home alone at 9:30 p.m. and offered a chauffeur. I glanced at the garage full of Maseratis, Lamborghinis, and Rolls-Royces and politely declined. Ethan, who had a flexible schedule, became my designated driver, picking me up every day on his motorcycle, rain or shine. Inevitably, the rumors started again. I didn't care, but it blew up bigger than before. Jake showed me a post from a local influencer exposing St. Jude's resident gold digger and mean girl. The post claimed I was lazy and manipulative, which was why the Millers kicked me out. Now, accustomed to a life of luxury, I was clinging to rich men. First, it was the creepy old headmaster. There was a photo of us chatting. Then, it was a hoodlum with silver hair who drove me to school. This criminal had apparently been to jail for stealing game keys. Now, I was with a new sugar daddy. There was a photo of me getting out of a Rolls-Royce. Could I explain that the headmaster was my neighbor, the hoodlum was my brother, and the sugar daddy was my dad? Would anyone believe me? Chloe, I believe you, Jake said. Don't let it get to you. The hoodlum is my brother. The sugar daddy is my dad, I said calmly. Josh's laughter erupted behind me. Sure, Chloe. Step-brother and sugar daddy. The class roared with laughter. I'd been too low-key. The post went viral, hitting local trending topics, then national, climbing rapidly. People love a good scandal. My life was dissected online, with plenty of embellishments. She's so fake. All her clothes are knockoffs. If you can't afford it, don't wear it. Hello? Custom made? 3 boyfriends at once. She's such a slut. She should be expelled. I'd never even had one boyfriend. Those awards are fake. They had official seals. I was trying to figure out how to clear my name when Ashley approached me and placed an invitation on my desk. Chloe, my parents are having a party tomorrow night. Lots of reporters will be there. Just apologize, and this will all blow over. How thoughtful of her. We can still be a family. No thanks. But a party. That could work. I could clear my name and crash their party. That night, I hit #1 on the trending topics. My dad was furious. He called Twitter headquarters, threatening to buy the whole company and shut it down. My mom wanted to sue everyone. Alex sharpened his scalpels. Ethan added a new boss to his game called LY, which, when defeated, displayed the message "I'm wrong." I told them to wait. The real show was tomorrow night. My arrival caused a stir, but Ashley must have prepped the reporters. They just filmed me, no questions. Ashley grabbed my hand, pretending to be close. "Don't worry, Chloe. I told the reporters everything. Just relax." I nodded absently. She frowned and led me to a group of socialites. "This is Chloe, my sister." A girl in a yellow dress sneered at me. "Ashley, why did you bring her? Look at that outfit. So tacky. Where did she get it? A thrift store?" I glanced down at my aquamarine gown. What was wrong with it? It was one of a kind, designed by Chanel herself. "Be nice," Ashley said. "Chloe is just not used to these things." She turned to me. "Chloe, let me find you something else to wear." "I like this one," I said firmly. She looked pained. "But it looks so cheap." I ignored her and turned to a large screen. Chanel's head designer was being interviewed. "This is my proudest creation this year. A truly unique piece, inspired by Chinese culture." The camera panned to an aquamarine gown, identical to mine. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The socialites' expressions changed. Ashley stammered, "It's a coincidence." The designer's voice boomed, "I designed it for a young lady named Chloe." Ashley's face turned green. I almost squealed with delight. She recovered quickly. "Chloe, you said you were bringing friends. Where are they?" I craned my neck towards the entrance. A Rolls-Royce pulled up. I smoothed my dress and ran towards it. "They're here." Reporters swarmed me. "Miss Chloe, can we get a statement? We're live. Can you clarify the recent rumors? Are you aware of your family's feelings about your behavior? Is it true you have 3 boyfriends? There are claims that you're a gold digger. What do you have to say?" My head spun. The car stopped. My parents and brothers stepped out, instantly drawing all eyes. "Oh my God, it's the Graysons. They never attend these things. The Millers must be so thrilled." I glanced at my former adoptive parents. Their faces went from shock to elation. They rushed forward. "Mr. Grayson, Mrs. Grayson, it's such an honor." My former adoptive dad practically bowed, his outstretched hand trembling. My former adoptive mom stood beside him, beaming nervously. My dad ignored them, his eyes scanning the room. He spotted me and walked over. Ashley was standing near me, her knuckles white as she gripped her dress, her face tight with anticipation. My dad stopped in front of her. Ashley looked up, her face brightening. "Mr. Gr." He waved at me, smiling gently. "Chloe, come here." Ashley stared at me in disbelief. I grinned. "Forgot to introduce you. This is my dad." The blood drained from her face. She swayed. The reporters pushed past her, surrounding us. I gestured grandly. "The headmaster is my neighbor. The hoodlum is my brother, Ethan Grayson, also known as Fire." He gave me the beta keys. I didn't steal anything. The Rolls-Royce? That's my dad's. This is my mom, Elaine. She's a famous designer. She makes most of my clothes. One of a kind. And this grumpy guy is Alex, my older brother, the doctor. Gasps punctuated each sentence. When I finished, the room was silent. Finally, a reporter stammered, Mr. Grayson? No comment, my dad growled. I sighed. Dad, don't be rude. He instantly softened. Okay, sweetie. He turned to the reporter, his face beaming. What did you want to ask? The reporter fainted. We didn't stay long. Dad tossed a USB drive to the reporters and turned to the Millers. Actions have consequences. I looked at them, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. My former adoptive mom rushed towards me. Chloe, we were wrong. We're still your adoptive parents. I smiled. We signed the papers, remember? She froze. We got in the car and left. That night, everything was cleared up. The trending topics flipped, hashtag Chloe Grayson is living the dream, hashtag lucky girl, hashtag heiress found, hashtag fire god, hashtag dreamy, hashtag exposed. The USB drive contained proof that Ashley had orchestrated the whole thing. I didn't understand her motives, so I met with her. She sobbed, begging for forgiveness, claiming jealousy for the life she thought I'd stolen. I told her I couldn't forgive her. I hadn't asked to be their daughter, and now she was trying to blame me for her unhappiness. I told her about my 10 years of servitude, about the price I'd paid for simply growing up. I told her that actions have consequences. I wouldn't press charges, but this would stay on her record forever. As for the Millers, they'd raised me and I wouldn't betray them. But I'd repaid their kindness tenfold. We would have no further contact. I'm grateful that, even at my lowest, I held on to hope. And now, at my highest, I can stay true to myself. Even if I hadn't been the Grayson heiress, I know I would have been okay.